Sky wandered through empty streets, not understanding where all the residents had gone. His ears caught a distant roar, a sound he had never heard before. The sky above the city had become somehow wrong, as if the air pressed down on his shoulders. Sky noticed dark spots on his hands, but decided it was just dirt. Ahead, in the shadow of a house, he saw his friend's silhouette, but the creature was slowly turning with a horrible grinding sound. Sky's hands trembled as he tried to hold a rusty pipe for defense. Fever burned through his body from within, turning everything around him into blurred spots of red and black. He caught himself growling. An inhuman sound escaped his throat before he could stop it. When Sky blinked, his vision split for a moment, showing two different views of the same corridor. He pressed himself against the cold wall, feeling his heart beat at an impossible speed that should have killed him, but instead made him stronger. Sky's eyes exploded from within, replaced by 3 new red ones that saw every detail in complete darkness. His spine bent with a disgusting crunch, creating an inhuman form that let him move along walls and ceilings. Bone spikes burst through his back, tearing his clothes and splattering black liquid that hissed on the floor. Sky discovered he could sense other creatures from a kilometer away. Every heartbeat became a beacon for hunting. When he tried to scream, an inhuman howl tore from his throat, shattering nearby windows and making other monsters freeze in fear. Sky's torso opened like a ribcage, revealing a smaller version of himself nested inside, controlling the larger body. He could detach body parts that hunted independently before merging back into his form. He fought another transformed creature in a brutal territorial battle that painted walls with glowing blood. His regeneration was instant, severed limbs growing back within seconds, each time stronger and more monstrous. Sky stood victorious, accepting the truth. He was no longer Sky, but something far worse that enjoyed the hunt. The last fragment of Sky's humanity screamed from somewhere deep inside, trapped in a body that no longer obeyed him. His form had become a grotesque masterpiece of mutation, limbs that bent in impossible directions and eyes that multiplied across his flesh. He encountered other survivors and watched through his own eyes as his body tore them apart without mercy. The transformation was complete, and the creature that was once Sky ruled the darkness of the city. Nothing remained of the sad, frightened being who had sat alone in that abandoned building just days ago. The night Sky achieved his final form was the night the city truly died. Not just the people, but hope itself. His consciousness had fragmented into multiple aspects, each controlling different parts of his monstrous body simultaneously. He could feel through 1,000 sensory organs, hunt with intelligence and savagery combined. Other survivors who found him begged for quick deaths, but none were granted. Sky had transcended beyond hunger or mercy. He simply existed as destruction incarnate, the nightmare made flesh that Sprunki had always feared. The creature that was once Sky achieved a state beyond comprehension. His form existed partially outside reality itself. He could feel dimensions that human minds weren't designed to process without breaking. Other transformed beings knelt before him in worship and terror. The city's sky turned red whenever he moved, as if the world itself recoiled from his existence. Sky had become less a monster and more an apocalypse-wearing skin. The transformation that consumed Sky left behind only echoes of what he once was. His essence permeated every atom of Sprunki, invisible yet omnipresent. Those who survived could feel his gaze watching them always, unable to escape or hide. Sky was no longer bound by flesh or form. He had become the very concept of mutation itself. The city would never be free of him, for he had become its eternal living curse. The transformation consumed Sky entirely, scattering his consciousness across Sprunki like an infection. He was no longer a creature, but a force of nature, present in every shadow and heartbeat. Those who once knew him felt his presence constantly, unable to separate themselves from his influence. The boundary between Sky and the city blurred until they became one entity. What remained was neither monster nor god. Something far more terrible that defied definition. Ready for a challenge? According to statistics, only 3% of viewers manage to like the video and subscribe to the channel before the timer runs out. Write a comment if you made it in time. Sky's journey from frightened child to absolute apex predator was finally complete. He consumed the last remnants of hope in Sprunki, absorbing its essence into his expanding consciousness. The transformation had taken everything from him and given him infinite power in return. Other beings worshipped or fled at the sight of him. Sky gazed upon the ruined city and knew this was his eternal kingdom, and he would rule it forever as the embodiment of transformation itself. The story of Sky ended not with a bang, but with a whisper, a soft, terrible understanding that he had won. The city was his, the survivors were his, the very concept of fear itself belonged to him now. Sky looked upon what he had created and found it beautiful in its horror. He had become the nightmare that all of Sprunki whispered about in the dark. The transformation was complete, and he would rule the ruins of this world forever, waiting for new victims to arrive and join his ever-growing family of the twisted and changed. At the very end, Sky understood that his transformation had never been a curse. It was his true calling. What began as fear and pain had blossomed into absolute power and dominion. He ruled Sprunki not through tyranny, but through inevitable presence. Others worshipped him not out of compulsion, but because his existence redefined what was possible. Sky was no longer bound by the concept of victory or defeat. He simply was, eternal and unchanging, the ultimate monument to transformation itself. The broken god of a broken world had finally come home. Sky discovered that immortality had a cost he hadn't anticipated. The slow erosion of all meaning, power without challenge became empty. Domination without resistance turned hollow. He ruled over a city of the transformed and the broken, yet felt more alone than he ever had. The hunger that once drove him had faded into an endless numbness. Sky realized with terrible clarity that he had won the ultimate victory and lost everything in the process. The transformation had given him everything except the one thing that mattered, a reason to continue existing. Sky realized that the transformation had been less about becoming a monster and more about losing everything that wasn't. All the pain, the fear, the joy, the sorrow, stripped away until only the hunger remained. And then even the hunger faded. He looked at his reflection in pools of black water and saw not a creature of power, but a void given shape. Others had begged to become like him, and Sky pitied them. They would one day understand what he had learned, that godhood was just another word for endless, suffocating loneliness. The final chapter of Sky's story had no ending because he simply refused to finish. Immortality meant suffering indefinitely with the knowledge of what he had sacrificed. Other creatures brought him tributes and worship, but he saw through their eyes the horror of what he had become, not a god, but a cautionary tale given flesh. Sky realized that the greatest curse wasn't the transformation itself, but the terrible clarity it brought, understanding exactly what was lost and why it could never be recovered. He would watch the world crumble around him, forever alone in his infinite power. When the last survivor finally died, Sky felt no relief or satisfaction. Eternity stretched before him like an infinite prison with no exit. The transformation had promised him everything: power, strength, dominion over all others, but delivered only endless isolation. He ruled over a dead world with absolute certainty that no one would ever challenge him again. Sky had finally understood the ultimate truth. The greatest curse wasn't becoming a monster, it was surviving long enough to realize the terrible price of immortality. The transformation had promised Sky everything, but delivered eternal torment instead. Immortality revealed itself as a lie, not a blessing, but a slow descent into meaninglessness. Other creatures eventually aged and died, finding peace in oblivion. But Sky remained, watching civilizations rise and crumble, unable to join them in death. He ruled over emptiness, possessed infinite power he could never use, and understood the darkest truth, that some transformations were less about gaining something and more about losing everything that mattered forever.